kind of mark?
Hello. Welcome to the Accidental Wrestling Fan. John, I think, will be joining us shortly. He was taking care of some business out in Centerline. A prominent wrestling figure has an institute out that way, so he was out there visiting. Kaz, how you doing today?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Not too bad. It's cold as shit in my house because I was just talking about how my girl, I think it's supposed to be close to like 90 degrees this week.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be pretty hot. She will turn on fans everywhere. She'll have the air on. It's mostly for the dogs because we have a dog that's part Australian Shepherd, so she gets hot as shit.
hmm
She loves to play with the ball outside, but when it's this hot, you throw it a couple times and she'll be laying on the ground panting. So we have to have the air on for her. And now I got like the stuffy nose and all that. Like I was wearing a hoodie when you and I were talking before we started recording, and yeah, I was just a mess. So I got some coffee.
Is
So
it you got central air?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
all right. Guys.
yeah. We're bougie over here. So we were talking about Austin Aries before we started recording. It's just one of those things that came up because I was going through old CVV interviews. Chris Van, I say Vliet, but I don't know if that's how you say it. Vliet. Anyway, he's a handsome white dude that does wrestling interviews. He uh, he trained to be a wrestler, I believe. What is he Canadian?
I do not know. I, I we'll go with that. Yes.
I think he seems Canadian because he's a really polite guy. So that leads me to believe that he's not from this country.
He probably is
Because
Canadian.
yeah, I think he's from Canada or maybe Ohio, something like that.
Or
Same difference, right?
Idaho.
Idaho. Yeah, he's just a really nice, handsome white guy. That's a really good interviewer. Because one of the things I like about him is that he does ask some follow up questions and kind of respectfully push people to expand upon their answers a little bit. During the Aries interview I watched, because the reason why I fell down that rabbit hole is because I came across the interview with John Morrison in CVV, and Chris asked him about the Bound for Glory no sell thing. Hennigan or Morrison didn't really give too in depth of an answer, other than they had some issues outside of the ring going into that. Because if you don't know, Austin Aries tweeted that Taya Valkyrie, now Frankie Monet in NXT, was husky. And it's one of those things in Aries' interview, he doesn't really say whether or not if it was a work or a shoot or what. He tries to kind of blur the lines of things. But in any regard, something was up. And Aries did this whole no sell thing after he got hit with his own finish, and then Morrison's finisher on top of that. He was flipping people off. Morrison looks at him and goes, "Are you fucking kidding me?" It was this whole crazy mess. But you know, we were talking about Austin Aries' personality, the way that he comes across, because I don't think it can be denied that Austin Aries is a great talent. I think you would agree with that.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, Aries has been around for about 20 years now. I first saw him in Ring of Honor? Or was it IWA? I think it was Ring of Honor because it was a part of Generation Next. The first time I saw him, I think, was like Death Before Dishonor 2. He was teaming up with. Was he teaming with Jack Evans? I think it was one of those things that they were doing like the Evans and Roddy tag team, but Alex Shelley was supposed to be the main guy, and I think they were kind of experimenting whether Jack and Aries would be the team or Jack and Roddy would be the team. But I remember him standing out a lot because he was very dynamic, the way he moved, the way he wrestled. It wasn't like anybody else. And I always have thought that he was very talented. Back then, I felt like maybe he didn't have a ton of charisma, but as he started to progress throughout his career, more of his personality started to come out. And I thought, despite his size, his skills and his speaking ability, I always thought he could be a big star. But then, you would hear about these different incidents regarding his attitude and things that he would do backstage that seemed to get him in hot water politically. And maybe I just thought, it was like, misunderstanding or a one-off. But then these things started to happen more and more over the course of his career. And the saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. So, getting to read like his tweets and interviews with him more down the line, I feel like he seems like a bit of a prick, like for real.
Yeah, definitely.
And sometimes it's hard to look past how much of a prick he is and see his talent. It's like especially in the last few years, it feels like his real life personality has been shooting him in the foot. I feel like he could still be a big star even now at what do you say was 43? Early 40s. I remember when
Yeah.
we were
Yep.
before we recorded. I feel like he could still contribute a lot to wrestling because as far as I know, he's never really had any serious injuries either. And it's kind of a shame to watch someone continuously get in their own way over and over again. And it's not like he keeps getting in his own way because he's got, drug addiction or is injury prone or anything like that. He's just an asshole and it's like he can't turn it off.
It's just like, how many bridges can you burn in this business? You know what I mean? And I
Right.
feel like he's burnt a lot of them. And again, it's like the opinions he's has every right to have those opinions, whether they be about his beliefs on COVID and mask wearing and the vaccine and being a vegan and eating meat. Hey, that's all fine with me. You're allowed to have that opinion. But as the way he states his opinions are like it's his way or the highway. Like no other opinions are correct. His ideology is the only ideology that matters. I think that's what's a big turnoff to me as far as his personality. That's what comes off very prickish. Um, like you said, as far as his in-ring work and his ability and his promo, he's one of the best. I mean, I wasn't that familiar with Austin Aries. I remember when he was in Impact a little bit. He was actually the champ there before the John Morrison thing. I'm talking like his feud with like Jeff Hardy and stuff. He was actually the champion, correct?
Yeah, he beat Bobby Roode. Bobby Roode was the longtime Impact Wrestling champion back in 2012 now, somewhere in
Yeah.
that, almost 10 years ago. And it was one of
Like
those things where Aries was the top guy in the X division, and he was so good and was such a awesome wrestler, put that belt really on a high pedestal that they came up with the option C thing where if you're the X division champion come I think it was Destination X, you can cash in the belt. Like you give up the belt and you get a guaranteed title shot, which I think is a really cool concept. It makes
yeah.
the mid card title more important because then people want to fight for it because they know it gets them a title. So he won the belt over huge, and then um, I forget what happened in that time period. I know he flip flop face heel. Him and Bobby Roode actually ended up having a really good tag team. And I think he left to go back to did he go back to Ring of Honor and then he went to WWE? I can't remember the timeline. But any regard, he was a top guy at Impact for a long time. He left WWE. He came back. He did the whole belt collector thing where he was winning belts all over the place. He won the Impact belt. He beat Eli Drake in street clothes. Like he came out of the crowd and answered the open challenge, all that stuff. So, people were hyped to have him back. And then I felt like this run didn't really last that long. He had the belt. He lost it to Pentagon. He won it right back from Pentagon. Then he did the feud with Morrison, and that led to the Bound for Glory no sell. And then he never came back after that.
Yeah, he hasn't wrestled since then, has he?
He wrestles, I believe. He was in MLW for a bit.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, but I feel like he kind of fell off the face of the earth after that. Though he did a couple of shows and like MLW and other places, and he hasn't really been around since.
Yeah,
Not
like
off the top of my head anyway.
Yeah, like his run there when he was in WWE, you know, with on NXT and really the 205 live stuff when he was cruiserweight champ, that was like top notch stuff. That was really good stuff. Even the commentary work he was doing, he was really good. I was a huge fan of him, and I guess even in that company, he was rubbing people the wrong way, and that's ultimately why he was let go. Or did he just leave?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know he said that, you know, things weren't working out for him. Creatively, he seemed kind of burnt out. I think
He wasn't feeling that creative, brother.
he wasn't feeling that creative. So for him and Pac, the cruiserweight championship match that was really highly touted because Aries had
Oh yeah,
he suffered a nasty injury down at NXT. Him and Roddy were in the tag team classic, and Nakamura injured him with a kick to the eye, and it
that's
kind of
right.
cut the Roddy Aries tag team short. And he came up as a commentator once he was healed up. He ended up started wrestling again, and they finally had someone who was a face and a big time challenger for then Neville, because Neville had moved over to the cruiserweight division, and he was really just a monster. It was crazy how well he was booked for that time period. And they had this big match leading up to, or big feud leading up to WrestleMania. And then it was on the pre show. So technically, they didn't get like the pay per view bonus for
Yeah,
being on the
yeah,
pay per view because it was the pre show. So there was issues with that. They didn't get royalties from the DVDs because they were still doing DVDs then. And that was a big sticking point for both guys. They were really upset about it. And then instead of giving Aries his big win in the submission match, they made him look like an idiot and had him do his finish, the last chancery, on the floor. And Neville tapped on the floor, and Aries thought he won because he made him tap. And it's like everyone knows that it makes him look like an idiot because you got to win a submission match in the ring.
yeah.
It was really dumb, and they ended up tapping out to Neville, and I think they experimented with him turning heel again, but he kind of dropped off the face of the planet. He seemed like and he admits to this, that he was really difficult to deal with towards the end because he was just really frustrated. He said that he was the kind of guy that would tell the writers, I would not say this like this. Can we maybe change this up a little bit? Can we say this a different way? And the writers hated it because they'd have to go talk to Vince and try to see if they can change it. And a lot of times Vince is going to say no because Vince doesn't give a shit. Why is this cruiserweight guy trying to change the
Exactly.
script? Who the
Exactly.
fuck's this guy?
Probably doesn't even know who he is really.
Yeah, I know.
Austin Idol? Ooh.
Austin Idol, the cross dressing guy from the '80s, but you
Do
know,
you do you see Austin Aries having some resurgence in his wrestling career? Do you think there's enough time for him to be somewhere again, or do you think, like I said earlier, that too many bridges have been burned at this point? I think I wonder if there's been talks with AEW and him. I almost said A and W.
A&W, that's right. Um, I
He's a
don't
guy
know.
that I think could shine in AEW. To be honest,
He could, but I know AEW at least pretends that they're trying to be super progressive, even though
oh yeah, never mind.
there's people that work in that company that are clearly not progressive.
Young Bucks.
You said it, not me. Let's see, Aries, he's working, was it, pulling up the video here. He is teaming with Ricky Reyes at a global syndicate wrestling show. I don't know. Oh, New Jersey promotion. So
Okay.
there's some decent names that are coming through here. They're like Deanna Perrazzo, Kimberly, Allison Kay, quite a few people. So he's still getting work. He's still on decent size indies,
Yeah, I mean,
but
I guess he doesn't ultimately have to be in a big company if he's comfortable with working the smaller indies and he's still loves it and having as much fun as he can and making a living, then, so be it.
Well, I again from that interview that I watched, it seemed like he liked the idea of working multiple places because he didn't want to be tied down to a contract. He said that when you keep signing short deals like he was doing with Impact, it keeps you in the honeymoon phase. He said, what happens when you get into a long term relationship? You feel like you don't have to work for it anymore. Things kind of turn to shit. People think they can talk to you a certain kind of way. I think he didn't really want to have necessarily like an employer and have to deal with all the hoops and hurdles of like, well, I'm signed to an Impact deal, so I can't wrestle here, or because I'm signed to Impact, you got to talk to them and get them to, work things out so I can come and wrestle for you. He wanted to be able to wrestle whenever he wanted, wherever he wanted, and I do respect that. I do respect that because um, in a business like wrestling where people's bodies get broken down so much and they get chewed up and spit out, I think it is important to be able to stand your ground and say, like, well, I want to make as much money as I possibly can. And I also want to be able to work wherever I want to work and do what I want to do because technically I'm not an employee of any of these companies. So why would I sign these long term deals that I'm gonna be unhappy in 2 years, and I know I don't get to do what I want to do, and I'm stuck in a certain spot, and I have to keep doing this because I signed a contract. So
Yeah.
I understand that
I
mindset.
I think that may be where the business is actually shifting. You see a guy like John Moxley who's pretty much doing whatever he wants, wherever he wants, and um, it'll be interesting to see like if Samoa Joe does the same thing, Daniel Bryan if he ultimately does the same thing, and you might start to see this with younger guys coming up just saying, well, do I really have to sign this big contract with, WWE or AEW or New Japan or whatever, or can I just bounce around? I could see the business shifting in that sort of direction, which would
I
be uh uh, uh you know would be I don't know the word I'm looking for. It would be awesome. That wasn't the word I was looking for, but a
like
breath of fresh air
yeah,
in the
it'd be
business.
you mentioned Moxley. It'd be I believe they call that a paradigm shift.
Yeah. To
Uh,
see, a guy go to WWE and then maybe be in New Japan and work a program and then come back. I don't know. That would be something different, something we've never really seen as far as the major promotion to go.
yeah, I think that the business might move a little bit more towards that. I think it should move a little bit towards that until, these men and women are started to be treated like actual employees of these companies and given health insurance and having more things taken care of once they're out of the business and not just because you're a top star, because you have drug addiction and we feel bad so we'll pay for your rehab. I'm talking about like the people like say a Sean Stasiak who wrestled for a number of years and decided to get out and become a doctor, that sort of thing. I feel like there should still be something for a guy like that. You wrestle X a number of years, you get some kind of pension or something once you retire, and not have to just be you know just a guy who shows up on DVDs and documentaries every once in a while, or you don't really
Yeah,
make a ton of money in royalties on your appearance in the video games or the different documentaries that I just mentioned. I feel like that there should be more money in this for them. If they're gonna have to do things like an employee would, they should get the benefits that an employee would.
definitely.
Yeah, so wow, this turned this into like a pro worker podcast. You're
Jesus.
talking about Austin Aries. Don't let your employer hear that conversation.
No, 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 no. I'll
We
try
talked
not
about
to.
Dana White whacking someone.